This episode of the WP Minute is brought to you by Pressable. You know what the best hosting feels like? Nothing. No panic alerts. No mystery downtime. No, hey, is the site down? Slack messages. That's the Pressable experience. WordPress hosting so reliable you forget it's even there. We keep your site fast, secure, and up 100% of the time, so you can get back to building, selling, blogging, or binging cat videos. No judgment, whatever you want to do. Go to Pressable.com/WP Minute and try hosting that disappears in all the right ways. Pressable.com/WP Minute. Pressable.com/WP Minute. Thanks, Pressable, for supporting the show.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Whose WordPress Agency Is This Anyway? My name is Kurt Von Annen. I'm here with my co-host, Toby Crines, and we're just stoked to have you. Toby, I know that you usually like to open with a story or a question, but today you're going to open with a list of books.
Books. We're going to talk books today. This was the cliffhanger from last week. Both Kurt and I each put together two lists of books. One is businessy and one is non-businessy. And interestingly enough, when we were talking offline last week, you and I both had one recommendation in common that we both kind of jumped to, and that was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, which is now a very old book. There it is. I've actually owned, I think, 2 or 3 copies, 2 that I purchased because I lost one, and one I got at like a little library because I lost the other one.
So you just took it from the library and stole it?
Well, in Minneapolis and others, there's like these little libraries. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, need a book, take a book, have a book, leave a book.
Yeah, and they're all around town. Just people put them up in their yard, and sometimes you can find some good stuff in there. But anyway, 4-Hour Workweek. So it's like, to me, like it's the title's a joke because it's not about getting to a 4-hour work week. And even Tim Ferriss has admitted, like, it was just in the book, he admits the title is just a title to sell books.
Yeah.
And so he's like, well, 8-hour work week, not as interesting as 4 hours. And so he talks about this in the book. And so you got to kind of take everything with a grain of salt and like also like realize that the stories in the book are probably not real. Like, even though he touts them as real. But there's some great stuff in there. Like, if you want, to me, the core is probably like, the book encourages you really to challenge your assumptions. Whatever you think business is, whatever you think work is, challenge that. You know, the kind of the underpinnings, and it's kind of like live life like a millionaire without actually having to be one. And so, for example, in the book, he talks about take mini retirements of a week or a month rather than save it all up till you're dead. One big retirement at the end. Like, he's like, why not do it now? You know, let's say you love golfing. Why wait until you're 65 to golf a lot? Like, do it now. You can figure it out, you know, whatever
just go golfing.
That means for you. Talks a lot about being effective versus being efficient. And the idea there is like, find the things that move the needle for your business. Or if you're at a job, find those things. For example, let's say you have a boss. Let's say Kurt's your boss. There are things that are going to make Kurt happier than other things that you do as an employee. Do the things that make Kurt happy. Don't worry about the other things so much.
I like the idea of this book is, for a lot of upstart entrepreneurs, they're good as solopreneurs, but when they become people that want to hire people, it's like you put up this wall and you go, I can't do that because XYZ, 1, 2, 3, whatever. This book does a really good job of like opening up the blinds, right? And saying, no, you could get a virtual assistant for 4 hours a week. You could do this, you could do that. And then you go, wait a minute, I really could start to do some of these things. When Mañana No Mas started to grow, it was through the idea that I could leverage the work of other people without abusing them or taking advantage of them. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying use people in their skill sets to promote what we do. And I don't want to give him like full credit for it because I think that's kind of the wrong way to go, but it was certainly inspirational. Like, I've put way too many limits on myself as a person growing a business. And if I start to pull some of those limits back a little bit, I see more opportunities for growth.
Yeah, there was a time where the Mighty Mo, we delivered pristine code using the WordPress code standards that are published on the WordPress docs. And after a few years of that, at some point I was like, what would happen if we just threw away this requirement of doing pristine, beautiful code? Code is poetry. Code is poetry. That's something that used to be hot in the WordPress community.
Yeah.
And one day we just threw it away, and it just saved us time and energy and money, and nobody noticed.
Nobody cared.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me the things that we hold on to as individuals because we think it's important, but no one else cares. And we never take the time to really ask, right? But if we ask more questions, if we got more involved with our clients, we would be able to extract that information and go, well, then why am I doing it this way?
Yeah. And another thing, I think this is in the book. One way to figure out what's important in your business is to go on vacation unplugged for, let's say, a week. You know, if you haven't done a week, do a week. See what's important. You'll know what's important when you get back.
Yeah.
And probably not much is all that important. That's probably the short answer. There's probably one or two things, but like the longer you go, the more you'll kind of notice, you'll get a better sense for what the important things are. What's something you think, Kurt, in your business right now that you might be doing that is basically a waste of time, but that it requires a lot of your time right now?
So we are really, really big on project management software that I use to run my different projects. It gives me tremendous oversight over what we're doing. So for me, it's still a valuable tool, but we also give that transparency to our clients. And there's always some kind of onboarding or some kind of friction about this is the SaaS platform. This is how you log in. This is a screenshot of what you're going to see. This is how you add a comment or a note, to the work that we're doing for you. And I think it's this great value added thing. Like for some reason, you'll hear it in my own marketing. Like this is this great thing that we do. But in reality, when I look at the percentage of clients that actually use this tool, it's like 5%, 5 to 8%. And the people that are using it aren't even using it at a high level. Like I'm saying, you can direct message me. You can put comments on different tasks we're doing for you. You can do all, you have access to all of this stuff, but nobody uses that access. What they want to do is they want to send me an email.
Mm-hmm. And they want to say, what's the status of this?
Yeah.
I was thinking, Glenn, my SEO guy, and I are producing a report, a 6-month SEO report for a client who's paying us for SEO consulting. And we've on this one report that we're going to deliver next week or the following week, I bet you after all the research and analysis has been done. So Glenn did a ton of research and analysis to like compile the results and think through it. He presents this first draft of this report to me, and it's probably like 20 pages. Since that day, to about 3 weeks ago, I bet you him and I have invested, I wouldn't doubt if it's 30 hours combined on refining this report. Like, I bet you we didn't need to do that.
Yep, because it's going to go in a drawer.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work for a large corporation, and they would onboard other businesses to their distributorship. And they had this giant binder of like all of the company guidelines and communication systems and how to place a purchase order and all these, this giant book they sent to owners of all these distributed businesses. Nobody read those books. Everyone just grabbed them, threw them in the bottom drawer, underneath a bottle of whiskey, and that was it. And then of course, 6 months, a year later, those things would come up, but it would always fall on different department heads within the parent company to put those fires out. And you'd always go, but that's in that guide we sent you. And they're like, I haven't seen that since the day I unpacked it.
Exactly. So, Kurt, what's a great business book that you'd recommend?
This was one of my go-tos from the very beginning. This is a John Maxwell 360-degree leader book. I was, for lack of better ways of describing things, I've always been kind of like that middle manager person trying to find a way, like, how do I run my team really well, but how do I have influence on my peers and the people above me? Like, I always found that I had this niche of kind of like just being able to communicate really well to, like, UPS is a great example. I worked for UPS for a couple of years. And so it was like, I trained my team. I had a peer of supervisors that I, had influence with. And then there were all those people above us, all the way up to like the hub supervisor. And, we could have an adult beverage together and have a conversation, and I could have influence in that conversation. And so maybe it's an echo chamber for me, but I really took a lot of great gold nuggets out of the 360-degree leader because I feel that that's where most people in leadership struggle.
Yeah. Do
How
you
about
think
you?
that I was curious about this 360-degree leader because I've never read that one. One thing I was curious about, just generally speaking in my life, like, because I also conceptually try to achieve that end. Like how can I be of most utility to the community, whether it's BP Minute community, or the local WordPress community here, or my family, my house. But one thing I struggle with, so I have a friend who runs a similar agency. He doesn't do any of this stuff, and he's doing just fine. Good guy. He's not influential, doesn't know anybody, but his business is just fine. It's been going on for decades,
Yeah, it's unique to see how you can choose to become part of the community and try to have influence and work things through. It's to me, it's I was in the WordPress space since 2004, but I didn't really embrace community until now. I'm losing track of time. But when was the WordCamp US in San Diego? It was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I mean, that's really when I started to go, oh, you know what? I probably need to do a little bit more. I mean, I was doing stuff with Lifter LMS and WP Tonic, but going to that WordCamp was my first real exposure to community in person, doing stuff. And then I started going to WordPress meetups and all that stuff. And so to your point, yeah, I had an agency. I had hundreds of customers between 2008 and 2020, business was just fine.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a requirement, but I think, and you're going to make me do it. I put it off to the side. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it or not.
Do it, Kurt.
I wrote my own dang book on leadership.
There
it's
it
called
is.
Action Leadership from the Edge. I personally think that everybody is called to a certain position of influence or leadership within their lifespan. And I feel that in community as a whole, I feel that like society, people don't acknowledge their own call to leadership, and that creates a gap in leadership, and the universe hates gaps. And that's why people that are poor in their positions get those positions. I believe people that weren't naturally called to their positions get those spots, because the people that were naturally called to those positions, they abstained. They go, oh, I know a lot of people that should be leaders, that should have influences within their circles, but they'll say things like, oh, I don't really think I'm a leader. I'm a good support person. I'm a good number two. I'm a good co-host, not a host, right? And that's false humility. Like, if you have a skill or a talent, you just need to put that forward, and by doing that, you're going to execute influence over other people. And that's what leadership is. Leadership is just influence. It's not really a position. It's the influence.
Yeah. That's a good segue into a book that I love and I've read many times. I even gave a presentation on, it was called WordPress Moneyball was the presentation, but it is Moneyball by Michael Lewis. Fantastic book about kind of just looking at the landscape. And this is a biography about a guy who still ran the Oakland A's. I don't know if he's still there now that ownership changed, but so Billy Beane ran the Oakland A's. But the gist of it is, like, he was really good at seeing the what was going on in the business side of baseball and working within some very real money constraints that his team was facing compared to big market teams like the Yankees, the Cubs, Dodgers, like in LA and New York. And I always thought, I think it's a great business book, even though it's a movie starring Brad Pitt and it's a baseball movie, but the movie and the book are actually both really good. And I don't always say that, by the way. Most of the time I'm like, the movie's better or the book's better, but both are great in their own way. And it's just great, a great inspirational story about how to think outside the box. And as he's doing it, nobody's catching on. And that's kind of the greatest part. He's crushing everybody and they're not even noticing that he's doing it.
That silent success to me has a certain power to it. When you can work in the background and really see some strides. And then one day you wake up and you're like, hey, I got here. It's pretty cool.
And as we talk about that leadership thing, after a while, everyone started noticing. And now the whole, not only baseball, but basketball and football are now totally subscribed to the theory in Moneyball. And it's because of Moneyball, basically, that got that ball rolling.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. So what other books? Are you more like a leadership person or more like a numbers and finance person?
I'm more of a businessy person. I like thinking. So there's this great book called "It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work" by Jason Fried and David Hanmeyer Hansen, and they built the 37 Signals company, which built Basecamp and still runs Basecamp to this day. But they're kind of notorious for thinking outside of the box. Like, here's how most people think about work. Here's a different way to think about. Here's how most people think about running a company. Here's a different way to run a company, and they. I always think with business books, take them all with a grain of salt, but there's some great lessons in there. In fact, I saved a little paragraph here in this book. So here's the cover if you're watching our podcast. But the gist of it is they're very short chapters. This is whatever it doesn't take. Because there's this thing in business, I'll do whatever it takes to get the job done. And they're like, what does that mean? You can't give whatever it takes every day. That's like something for the reserve for a very emergency. Yeah. And what they say is, if you're in business long enough, I'm quoting here, there certainly will be rare moments when whatever it takes is truly called for. A real honest emergency, or maybe because you won't be able to make payroll, or because inaction will permanently scar your reputation. So yes, there are moments, rare, extreme moments. Don't drive your everyday business by the fear of those outliers.
Yeah.
And so what they say is rather than demand whatever it takes of your team or yourself, they ask, what will it take? And so it's an invitation for a conversation. It's kind of like, let's put some measurable stuff on here. Like, what will it take to achieve enough to move on to the next thing? Like that sort of approach. What's not worth doing? Because when you say, what will it take? Then you can say, well, what won't it take? Like, maybe this SEO report I'm making doesn't need to exist.
It sounds really odd, all right? But I'm getting older, so I think maybe these thoughts are normal when you get older. There's a lot of times when I think from an agency perspective, why am I doing this? Do I need to be doing that? Like, is that the kind of client that I really want? Like, just because a client's like, oh, hey, do you make websites? Hey, can you make it? Is that the path I want to choose? Do I want to go down? Do I want to babysit this project for the next 5 to 10 years? Do I, you start to have conversations with yourself that say, wait a minute, if I'm more purposeful about what I choose to do or engage in, I'm going to appreciate those decisions more downstream. And so there's a lot of, I find myself not saying I'll do whatever it takes. I do find myself saying, like, what do I really have to do?
Mm-hmm.
Which is weird because I used to, when I was younger, I had a higher ambition level, but that ambition level, it's like that seesaw life, right? So control and ambition are kind of fighting each other on the fulcrum, and I'm starting to fall more in love with control and planning and purpose than I am with blind ambition.
Yeah. So when I started my business, when I started doing it full time, it was 2007. What I wanted was to be great at building amazing, thoughtful, beautiful designs and things. And like you're saying, like after a while, the reality of that, first of all, that's not measurable. Like, what is that? You know it when you see it. Well, I know it when I see it. You might see it differently. Yeah. Might not know it even when I know it. And I think this happened, like you're saying, with age and experience, a lot of people and this is there's some balance there that needs to happen still. But like, here's an example. Like, I'm really right now in this moment stressing about a business decision that could change the direction of the Mighty Mo, like for long term. I'm going through some sort of a filtering process to make this decision, and I don't have a formal process. It's just kind of like I've been sleeping on it. I'm kind of losing sleep about it. But then I got to thinking today, I'm like, what if I assume my wife will continue working and making enough to pay the mortgage? Like, I'm like, and that actually gave me a lot of relief. I'm like, maybe this decision isn't that big of a decision after all. Like,
sometimes we put so much importance on ourselves unnecessarily, right? Like, we think everything hinges on us. And then when we, just like you said, go on vacation, right? If we take ourselves out of a situation, what is the real result? We just visited my son in Colorado. He's volunteering at a camp out there for the summer. And I got to tell you, he's doing great. He didn't need to see us. He didn't need us to be there. He didn't need me to
Congrats.
drive 1,000 miles in a weekend. He was having a great time. He's got friends. He took us to church, and he apparently knows the pastor. Walked right up and shook his hand and sat next to him for service. And I was thinking to myself, he's doing great. Like, it's great to see him, but he didn't need us to be there. We weren't rescuing anybody.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of times where we put this pressure on ourselves that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah. That actually is an interesting segue to this other book that I've read and recommend. The idea that you've produced a child, that really the goal of I think the goal of being a father, like my goal is to produce children that don't need me, that are
sustainable,
that are in a place where your kid is at, like doing great. Maybe they'll like to see me, but they don't need me. That's like my goal. There's this book, it's called Built to Sell. And that's the point of the book. They're like, how do you build a business that doesn't need you? That you could sell if you want, or you can maintain. Like, how do you build it in such a way that it relieves that pressure? And so one question I've been dealing with just outside of this podcast this week, it's part of this question, is about productizing offerings and like have you thought about that longer term? Like, what products do you have that might exist without you if you hired the right people?
So that's part of the allure with the product side of WordPress, the market, right? So if you want to get into the plugin market and do something, wink, wink, somebody might be getting into the product space soon. The idea there is that you're in products. So now hopefully you're going to have subscriptions and sales and all these things. But the other side of the coin is whatever we develop in WordPress is based on open source, and someone can fork it and all these other things too. So I have it's like the angels and the devils, right? It's like these things on my shoulders, like, oh my God, don't do product. Oh, you should do product, right? So there's that. But even in WordPress, as an agency, we have the ability to productize certain blueprints or bundles or things that we do with sites. And I've been really fascinated by that lately. Part of me is attracted to these super cool, large enterprise projects with the e-learning stuff that we do. But the other part of me is like, hey, in between those big projects, it's really satisfying to launch 10, 15, 20 sites a year that are $2,000 for startup and $80 a month for hosting and maintenance. Like, they're easy to sell. They're based on a template. The customers are happy, and it's affordable enough to where it's just that recurring income that happens month after month after month. And I think that that's, in a dream world, that's like, how awesome is that? If you can build a business on that, and then in my case, train my kid, hey, if I get hit by a bus, this is how you maintain this. It's revenue for them after I'm gone. Or if it's productized and it shows ongoing revenue based on a recurring revenue payment structure, then, they have that mathematical equation, right? They say, what's your projected revenue over 5 years? That's the value of the business, and sell the business.
Do any of those service offerings you just mentioned, design, launch, maintenance, do any of those not at all require your involvement at present?
Yes, I have them. I have a few of them set up as automated processes where they literally go, I have a food truck. I'd like to have a food truck website. Click, name, address, phone number, swipe a credit card, and it says, pick a URL, do this, here's your login, here's your sign in. You're off and ready to go. And it sets them up at $79 a month for hosting and maintenance. Like, done. And so, do I have to touch it? No. Do I touch it? Yes. Right? Do I have to? No. But I like to meet and greet each customer when they come in, and I like to say, oh, hey, I noticed you bought this package. Do you have any questions? We always try to exceed the expectation on the customer side, but realistically, I don't need to. And if the business were to develop more on that productized offer and then become a company that was sold on that premise, they wouldn't have to do anything with it other than maintain it.
Right. I think too, like, one thing that we do is, like, I have a full-time developer that is some percentage of his job is doing website maintenance and security. And the goal is that he's rather new. He started this year, so he's still raising, I don't know, a couple questions a week with me. But we're getting to a point, I think pretty soon, probably by the end of the year, he will not, maybe once a month he'll reach out and say, hey, I have a question about this upgrade thing and process. Like, I just think like agency owners will say, they kind of like, when they think of automation, oftentimes they think of the product you just described. You built like some computer software that does stuff. But I always think first, it's oftentimes easier. Like you could build that process that you described and just have a employee do the whole thing, and you still wouldn't have to touch it, like except tweak the process. And I was thinking,
there's interesting things from an agency perspective. Like just this week, we came up, and I don't want to call it a bug because I think that's insulting, but I noticed that the cadence accordion wasn't working the way the cadence accordion should be working. And then I had my tech guy look at it, and my tech guy goes, oh, it's a conflict with the Zoom integration. So if the Zoom integration is activated, the accordion doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. Okay, so I have no idea. I'm not a coder. I'm not going to put the time into it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to deactivate the Zoom integration. I'm going to make the change to the accordion, and then I'm going to reactivate the Zoom integration for them. So it's done. It's a workaround. But as an agency, knowing those types of small details keeps us from making those same mistakes going downstream. Like from now on, if a customer says to me, I want to have the Zoom integration inside my website, well, I'm going to put them on the Astra theme, not the Cadence theme. Right? Mm-hmm. Because in my mind, I'm like, well, if it went bad before, it'll go bad again. Who knows? Same thing like Lifter LMS and Cadence with the dashboard menu. Sometimes there's a menu issue there. So if I know it's a Lifter LMS website, I'm going to put them on the Astra theme. Like as an agency, as you build it, like that build to sell mentality is I should build a business that's sustainable, even if I don't know all the ins and outs of all those weird little eccentricities. We should focus on just the tools. So I really focus on simplicity at Manana no Mas. I have customers that come to me with all kinds of weird, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do the other thing? And I'm like, I'd really like this to stay as simple as possible so that we can maintain this and know that it's reliable. And so I really only focus on like 20 main plugins that make our revenue for us.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Give us another book.
You mentioned business. That's why I said, do you like business or do you like leadership? Seeing the Big Picture by Kevin Cope. Really, really great piece of work. He owns a company. He's co-owner of a company called Acumen Learning, and they do training and stuff like that. The foreword's written by Stephen Covey, so apparently he has friends in high places. I actually did an online review of this book with the author's blessing. So I did like an online training with this book. From a business perspective, it's really quite good, and it's small enough that you can read it without losing your mind. It's not War and Peace, but it goes over things like cash and profit and assets and how to identify those business markers, those KPIs, and then, how to make educated decisions and choices based on those findings.
I read a really book once. Book. I can't remember the title, but the whole book was about like, you only need one metric in business. How much money landed in your bank account this year?
Yeah, that's a hard one though, because there's so many variables that affect it, right? So from a true business analytic perspective, like for instance, let's say I have a business that requires capitalization, like I do landscaping, right? So every 3 or 4 years, I know I got to replace my zero-turn mowers, right? So I'm going to have a couple of years where how much money landed in my bank account? Well, a lot, because they were great years. And then all of a sudden I need a $7,000 mower. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, my account's $7,000 light. It's not $7,000 light. You should be aggregating that cost over an annual basis, right? So I think when it comes to certain businesses, what's in the bank account is really like fake security, right? Or fake warnings, right? Because you, like, for instance, Manana no Mas right now, we have invoices out that haven't been paid yet. They haven't been reconciled. And so we feel broke, but we're not broke because we have invoices out. Like we know the money's coming. It's just not here yet. I think a lot of businesses run that way. And the bigger your business gets, the more that ugly thing raises its head.
Yeah. That is true. Now that said, so I know somebody who runs a very small business. It was her and she had 6 employees or something like that. And she was having trouble meeting payroll one month, and she had a bunch of invoices out kind of thing. And I was like, well, just get a business credit card, put it on that. And she hadn't considered that as an option. And I think like, you're right. Like there is this like tyranny of the cash flow business mentality. I do think that it is what we should aim for generally, especially if you don't have a lot of capital investments needed, which we don't, besides computers, really. How many? But we only need one of those, and we only need it every few years, maybe, or more than that. I don't know. I this goes like to another thing, like just that knowledge, like, oh, there's a credit card for business. Like, people don't even know that. Like that you can,
Yeah,
and,
or lines of credit. You can get a line
Yeah.
of credit to cover things. I hate the idea of added expense to cover a fixed expense. And hopefully I'm saying this in a way that people get, because then that comes out of the margin, right? That's what's left in your bank account, right? Well, it's actually negative, right? And then it adds expense. But if you ran negative and you had bank fees, that would be an expense too.
Mhm.
So then you got to figure what's the best of two evils. And the best of two evils in that instance would be paying the interest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think like that's okay. Like, I don't think paying interest is inherently bad, like as a business move, but too many months in a row, maybe. But like,
Well,
I don't know,
Grant
there's a
Cardone
lot.
would tell you it's the absolute way to go.
Who would tell you that?
Have you ever listened to Grant Cardone or any of those Kiyosaki? He's another one that does it.
Okay.
They're the opposite of, God, what's his name? I have his book. They're the opposite of Dave Ramsey.
Uh-huh.
So Dave Ramsey says you shouldn't have any debt, right? Everything
Mhm.
should be paid off. You shouldn't have any debt. And then Grant Cardone and Robert Kiyosaki and some of these other financial guys, they say, no, you're missing the whole boat. The wealth is based on cash flow, not cash holdings. And so if you have a lot of debt, how much tax do you pay on debt?
Right.
And they're like, debt doesn't get taxed. Income gets taxed. And so if you leverage debt and then leverage more debt to get more debt, you end up buying things and capitalizing things with debt that you don't necessarily have to pay absorbent taxes on.
I think I'm following you. So let me just give you an example. If I'm curious if this is an example. Bought a car. It was a used car, but it was still quite a bit of money. We bought it took out a loan for the entire amount, most of it. And the interest rate on the loan was, let's say, 6%. Is that what you're talking about? Something
like Grant Cardone talks about buying buildings and flipping buildings. And then, the guy, he says he's a billionaire, but he talks about leveraging debt to make more money. It's a very interesting way to look at things. And I am not, by the way, folks, this is not official financial advice. We're simply making a podcast. This is for entertainment purposes only. I get fascinated at listening to the different voices in the same space.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Dave Ramsey saying, this is one way to do it. And then you've got, the Grant Cardones and Robert Kiyosaki's of the world saying to do completely different things. Robert Kiyosaki is the Rich Dad, Poor Dad author.
So I have this theory about stuff like this. It's about child rearing. When you have your first child, you're like, what do I do? I always tell people, like, figure out what you want to do and then find a book that supports that. And it's the same with business. Like you're saying, financial advice. There's every bit of financial advice that you can imagine. Go find it and follow that.
Yeah. I once worked for a guy, and he, by the way, didn't seem to have any problems with any of this stuff. It was like a struggle for payroll. It was a struggle for the building. It was always a struggle. And then he shows up with a brand new excursion 1 month and a brand new speedboat like 2 or 3 months later. And I'm like, I thought it was a struggle.
Yeah.
I think you're struggling less than some of us.
It's all relative, isn't it?
It's all relative. So let's talk about fun books. What do you read for fun?
I was thinking, I own about 20 books. Like, I only keep books I love, and this is one that I keep. It's by Shel Silverstein. It's called Uncle Shelby's ABZ book. I'm going to read one of the passages from here. They're all very short. Goes, this is quoting Shel Silverstein in this book now. And every passage is like this, by the way. So if you like this, definitely get the book. Goes, it's an ABC book. So we're on the letter D. D is for daddy. See daddy? See daddy sleeping on the couch? See daddy's hair? Daddy needs a haircut. Poor daddy. Daddy has no money for a haircut. Daddy spends all his money to buy you toys and oatmeal. Poor daddy. Daddy cannot have a haircut. Poor, poor daddy. See the scissors? Poor, 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 poor daddy.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. What about you? What fun ones do you read?
I used to race motorcycles, and so I allow myself to get wrapped up in people that won championships and like biographies and things. And so my daughter's actually named Rainey. She's named after Wayne Rainey. And so I read his book, super, super driven, professional athlete, got hurt in the sport, ended up in a wheelchair, and now is still involved in the sport as a team manager and things like that. So I've tried to meet him in person a few times, and he's not the most agreeable, easily greeted person. Even when he came to the offices at like Ducati, he was at the office at Ducati, and I was like, "Hey, I named my daughter after you," and he's like, and walked away.
Screw you.
So it's one of those, careful when you meet your heroes stories.
Yeah.
I listen to audio books a lot when I mountain bike or when I'm, doing stuff. And I've been listening to a series from M.A. Rothman, and it's called the Perimeter series, I believe. And it's the weirdest story ever because it's a story about an Amish guy that somehow ends up becoming like a samurai somewhere and then ends up working with the CIA and with the mob at the same time. Like, it's just a really bizarre character. And it is so pulled from reality for me that it's a little bit of escape. So I enjoy that. I listen to the audiobooks about that series, and I think I've listened to 4 of the books so far. I really enjoy it.
Cool. That reminded me of one thing. Let's say you're struggling for cash right now, but you want to listen to a bunch of great audiobooks. Check out your local library. Like I know in Minneapolis, they have a whole audio app that's very comparable to, what's the big one that Amazon owns? It's like Audible. It's like Audible. It's pretty much the same, but you log in with your library card and it's totally free. And they have a giant library of audiobooks.
Yeah. So the libraries are connected to all kinds of things. I mean, they're connected to online learning programs. They're connected to the audiobooks. You can go and like get DVDs for free, watch them for the weekend, just like,
streaming services.
Yeah. It's like Netflix without being Netflix.
Right.
It's really kind of a crazy deal.
And you mentioned learning. Our library in Minneapolis has free access to LinkedIn Learning, the entire LinkedIn Learning catalog.
Because that's awesome. Really good stuff.
Yeah, and maybe your library does too. You kind of have to like ask.
Yeah, you got to go figure that stuff out. Our community here in Kansas has so many programs and so many things for so many different areas of society. It's like you have to go and look and see what's available.
Yeah. Also, like I learned just last weekend. So in Minnesota, we have beautiful state parks. I know Kansas does too. You can go to the library, get a free state park pass for the day. Like the library, like you're saying, I love library. Like libraries are the greatest resource. I mean, among the greatest institutions ever invented, probably, like the public library.
It's funny to me because you can ask people now, like, hey, when's the last time you've been to a library? And like, if they're young people, they may have never been to a library. Like, that's the craziest thing. My kids love the library. My wife got them started at a very young age. Hey, you can go to the library. You can only pick 3 books, or you pick 4 books or whatever, like, because the library would say you could take 20 books. But you can only take 3 or 4. And then they would read them at home, get all excited. And then they'd go to the library, spend a couple hours there. And there was story time and all that junk that, for kids. But they really got into reading and going back and forth and getting the new books. And now to this day, both of them like libraries. When we moved to Kansas, I took Hayden to lunch in Kansas City to meet some friends I used to work with at Ducati. And I said, hey, is there anything you want to do in Kansas City while we're there? I'm thinking he's going to, I don't know, a restaurant or so. Like, I'm thinking there's something that he's going to want to. He goes, oh, I heard there's a library there where the outside of the library looks like a bookshelf. I want to go there.
Wow.
And that's where we went. We went to this really cool library where the outside of the building looks like looks like a bookshelf. The books.
That's awesome. Yeah. Other great fun tales. The whole Dogman. I celebrate the whole Dogman series. If you like fart jokes, poop jokes, heads exploding jokes, like there's nothing better. And you can read a book in, an hour or less.
Yeah. Yeah. So for really short books, I like books, and it takes me back to the businessy thing. But there was a book, it was like 37 pages. And it's called Tyranny of the Urgent. That book will change your thinking. It's kind of like Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, except Dan Martell's book is a whole dang book, right? But this little tiny, almost like a pamphlet, 37 pages, the little tiny book, Tyranny of the Urgent. You read that book, and then all of a sudden you start to rethink every meeting someone wants to schedule with you. You're like, is that really important?
Yeah, if you really don't like meetings, you should read more by Jason Fried and Dave Hanmeyer Hansen. Half their writings are about meetings and the tyranny of meetings.
Goodness gracious. Well, folks, we wanted to try and share with you some of the inspirations that we've had. So we thought this would be a fun episode to talk about some of the books. We mentioned it in the last episode, so here we are. But what else do you have going on that we can discuss besides books? You did something with AI this week, didn't you, Toby?
Yeah, so I went to LinkedIn Learning, which was free with my library card. I was like, just wanted to learn more about how to do prompts. And I'm also in like a vibe coding thing, a new class on LinkedIn Learning that was built in April. So I'm like, oh, this is pretty recent. So I'm doing that right now. But also I took this AI certification thing through LinkedIn Learning, and it was like an hour lecture, and then you answer 5 or 6 questions, and it's like, what should you do if you're presented with AI? Should you learn about it? Should you throw it out the window? Should you smash? It was just like obvious answers. Anyway, I got this certificate from LinkedIn Learning, which I then posted to my LinkedIn profile, and then from there it says, do you want to create a post about this on LinkedIn? I was like, yeah, sure. I just clicked go because it writes it all for you. And the funny thing about all this is that post saying, I completed a certification, and it was all like just click, click, click. It had more engagements, likes, whatever you want to call it. This post is probably my most popular post to date.
Oh, my goodness. I literally have hundreds of videos on YouTube on multiple channels, hundreds upon hundreds of videos. To this day, my number one video on YouTube is me and a friend putting a 49cc overbore kit in a pocket bike. And it's so frustrating because I have made, in my opinion, really great, paying it forward content, good training content. And then something silly like, hey, let's hang out in the garage, drink a couple of beers, and put a different motor in this little tiny motorcycle. Everybody's like, I got to watch that.
This is so fantastic, Kurt, because guess what? We have, I don't know, let's say 1,000 blog posts, most are about WordPress related things. Guess what the most popular post is by far? I mean, like 20-to-1, 30-to-1 ratio, how to install Minecraft on Ubuntu.
Isn't that heartbreaking? Like, on one hand, it's incredibly entertaining to think that way. But on the other hand, it's like, it's heartbreaking. Because I see, just as a coincidental thing, Chris Badgett is the founder of Lifter LMS, and we were having a talk about, hey, some courses make it, some courses don't. Some people, they fail at the marketing, or they fail at the product market fit. Like, they didn't even really recognize what the market wanted from them in the shape of a course. And I was joking because I do this ride every year called the Great Cycle Challenge. It's a nonprofit ride to raise money for kids with brain cancer. So this is my 8th year, and I'm joking around with Chris, and I said, and he goes, you should do something you're passionate and knowledgeable about, and it should have product market fit. And I said, there's like 14,000 people in this stupid Facebook group asking dumb questions every year about riding bicycles for this thing, right? I said, I should just make an online course about how to ride a bicycle. And he goes, you should. You'd be amazed who would sign up for it. So I put a question in, and I said, hey, in the group, I said, I'm not trying to spam the group. I'm not trying to sell anything yet. I just want to know, I answer a lot of questions in this forum. If I were to arrange those questions in a course, how many people would be interested in a course on how to buy the right bike, ride the right bike, and, ride it as an athlete, And within an hour, 2 hours, like 600 possible, positive responses. And that to me is like, it's like a real kick in the gut, because I've got a decade in of making like business content, leadership content, publishing a leadership book. And I put like 1,000 hours into making the Power Sport Academy, courses for the motorcycle industry. And then it's like a course on how to ride a bicycle, and 600 people are like, take my money.
Exactly. So people, if Kurt does do WordPress and digital stuff, but if you need to know how to ride a bike, he's the go-to resource.
If you need to know how to ride a bike, it's amazing. You don't know until you ask. Like, you don't You don't know what you don't know. So what is product market fit? What do people want? What are people looking for? And like, if you look at people's like Netflix accounts and what they really watch, or if you saw people's real search results, you would be mortified. You would be like, how stupid are we as a society? Like, this is what people want. But if we create what they want, we have product market fit and we can make success out of that.
Yeah. Well, I think we're about time here. Let's call it a day. We have other items, so people stay tuned next week for more excitement. Also, leave us comments, questions, email us. I don't know. Kurt, how can we get it?
The questions are, people need to, what do you want to hear? What questions do you have about running an agency? Like, that would really help Toby and I out with making sure that we have product market fit and that we're doing the right thing.
Also, I know this sounds dumb because you hear it everywhere, but apparently it makes a difference. Like and subscribe or whatever the options are on wherever you're listening or watching this, because it does help the algorithm, I hear. And also what I've heard from other podcasters is that it helps to ask. So please like and subscribe and hit that bell or whatever you do on whatever platform. Kurt, how can we get in touch with you?
Well, on a personal basis, I'm the only Kurt Von Onum on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find there. So hit connect, more than follow, hit connect, and then that way we'll really make a connection. And then for business, my company name is Mañana No Mas, and that's everything on social and for its website. Toby, you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Last name is Cryns. I run The Mighty Mo. If you type The Mighty Mo, WordPress will be #1 in the search results. So hope to reach out in whatever way works for you. So would love to also, like Kurt said, like we would love to hear questions that we can address on a future podcast. So via whatever medium works for you, send them our way.
Perfect. I think that's it. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the WP Minute, part of the Matt Report Media Network. This episode wouldn't be possible without our amazing pillar sponsors, Pressable, Kinsta, GoDaddy, 20i, and Elementor. These brands are supporting WordPress media and helping us invest in your future as a WordPress professional. Our Foundation Plus sponsors like Hostinger, Big Scoots, Stellar WP, Personalized WP, Weglot, and PatchStack help us keep the lights on. Thanks to all of our members in the WP Minute Slack channel, which you can join too. Head on over to thewpminute.com/support to get access. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to hit the share button or tell a friend about this podcast. See you in the next one.